Notre Dame fans, welcome back. Night edition. We're talking
After
Notre
Dark.
Dame Toledo, the After Dark, part 2 of our daily breakdown of Toledo. Vince, I'm fired up to get into this one, man, because I know it's our second show of the day, and we've had a lot of different things, and I'm excited about this one because this is the matchup I'm most looking forward to see. David Trudeau is fired up about this, and that's why he led the super chat. Presley Lapath is fired up. He finally gets to see it live. We're excited about that. So we've already got some super chats in there that came in like 15 minutes, 10 minutes before the show started. So we're fired up. My man, Mr. Adamiola, is in the house tonight, so we're excited about that. We normally do the show while he's working, so we're able to be in here tonight for that. Vince, this is the show I've been looking forward to doing this week because this is the matchup I like. This is a Toledo offense that is really good, in my opinion. This is a Toledo offense that to me can give Notre Dame some legitimate matchup problems if Notre Dame doesn't play better than they did last week. Sure. That's where I'm at, and that's why this matchup is really enticing to me, because we're going to see on a short week what kind of changes and what kind of adjustments Coach Freeman can make, which is going to tell us a lot about him early on. Second game of the year does not define you as a coach. But it's going to be a good early test for us to see, kind of the adjustments and changes he's going to be able to do, because this is an offense that I think has got some firepower. It's got some this. You know what it does, Vince? This reminds me. Remember that era when the MAC was like kind of pulling off some upsets, and they had those really high octane offenses that were scoring a lot of points, and they were putting like receivers and quarterbacks in the NFL all the time. Right. That's what this Toledo team reminds me of. Is there that kind of group? Now, should they knock Notre Dame off? No, not saying that. Right. That's not the point. The point, however, is this is a good football team, and this is the part of the ball where they present to me the most problems. Notre Dame not scoring on Toledo is going to require Notre Dame not to play well. Notre Dame is going to have to play really well to keep Toledo down, like to shut them down. People put like 10, 13 points. Notre Dame holds Toledo to 10 to 17 points. That's a really impressive performance, because I think this team is a little different than some of the ones they've had in recent years. And so you look at it, Vince, this is a matchup to me that has me a little juiced up, and I'm looking forward to this one. This is going to be a good one.
Going into the Florida State game, what were we most worried about against a Marcus Freeman-led defense?
Big plays,
right? Yeah. And this team, yes, it's a MAC team. We get that out of the way, right? It's a MAC team, okay?
Right.
But they still have the ability to big play you. Mm-hmm. And that's where they scare me, because you can shut them down, and then they go over the top, or they spring their little running back who, by the way, he looks small, but he can get through small holes. That's what I've seen when I've watched film on him. And they can big play you, right? I mean, Notre Dame gave up an 89-yard touchdown run, right? They gave up a long touchdown pass on a fade route from the slot. So if they get a matchup that they like, they could big play you. And again, I'm not saying I'm worried about Notre Dame losing. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is they can make Notre Dame, look bad at times. They have that ability to do that. And so it's going to be very interesting. I'm interested to see kind of how Toledo approaches this game, number one, from an offensive standpoint. And then number two, what steps is Notre Dame going to take defensively from last week?
Right.
Because it was, like I said, and we talked about this before, it was almost a tale of two different teams, right?
Right.
It was the aggressive going after it, just dominating and forcing the offense to do what they wanted you to do, right? And then there was we're going to kind of play base. We're going to kind of sit back. We're going to let them kind of dictate the tempo. And that's obviously not where Notre Dame excelled. So how are they going to approach this game? That's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, Vince. So you look at kind of compare them to last week. The difference here is they have a pretty mobile quarterbacks. Carter Bradley's a kid that can move. He's a pretty good athlete. The difference, however, is that this kid can throw. And that's the difference between what we saw last week. It's more of the McKenzie Milton thing, but with a stronger arm.
Right.
I think this kid Carter Bradley can play. He filled in last year for, I think their quarterback's name was Eli Peters. I always get his name wrong. I believe it was Eli Peters. Yes, Eli Peters. And when he stepped into the starting lineup, I mean, he did some really impressive things. His first start of the year came against Northern Illinois, and he went 29 of 44, which is a 65.9 per completion percentage for 432 yards and 3 touchdowns. The next week against Central Michigan, he passed for 265 yards, 3 touchdowns. He threw 5 picks in those 2 starts, right? That's an issue for him.
Sure.
But when I watch this kid play, I see a kid that's got some ability. And a kid that to me, if he's their quarterback, has a chance to do some good things against Notre Dame. So that and then the kid that they're bringing off the bench that they brought off the bench against Norfolk State. Is a kid that's more of a real dynamic runner, Taquan Finn. So Carter Bradley went 8 of 12 for 183 yards and a touchdown. He didn't play. I mean, they ran the ball. They had 2 blocked punts for touchdowns. So the offense didn't really get a chance to go full bore when they did. I mean, he averaged 15.3 yards per attempt, right? So that kind of sped up the breakdown a little, or the blowout a little bit.
Sure.
So that kind of factored into it. So,
well, yeah. and I know when we do these particular shows, the stacking up shows, we don't really do a special teams version, right? But Notre Dame's going to have to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to special teams against this group, just based on what we saw in the first game against Norfolk State. Look, they're going to come after you. They're going to come try to block a punt. And I'm not sitting here the most convinced that Notre Dame's going to be okay on special teams, So that's going to be another area to kind of keep an eye on. And I can't believe I'm saying that in this particular matchup. But based on what we saw from special teams on Sunday night, and based on what I saw from Toledo on special teams, they're going to have to play, they're going to have to play a good game.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to tackle well. They're going to have to be disciplined. I mean, this is a team that's going to run RPOs. They're going to run those long, dragged-out play actions and pull the ball and throw it. If the safeties are undisciplined, they're going to bang stuff behind. If the linebackers don't do a better job in coverage compared to what they did last week, they're going to give up plays. Right. I have said since the summer that Bryant Kobach's going to be one of the better running backs that Notre Dame is going to face this year. So they got a D2 transfer at guard. He played left tackle last year for them. He's now moved into guard. He came from, I think, Edinburgh University, which is a pretty good, decent, D2 program in Pennsylvania. Like I said earlier in the show earlier today, they've got a receiver that transferred from Georgia. I don't know if it's on this show or I did another show. I've done like 4 interviews today, where they've got a receiver, Matt Landers. You remember him? Who transferred in from Georgia, and he's having trouble getting on the field. So they've got some weapons. So this is going to be a really good test for Notre Dame. And again, are we saying like preparing you for Notre Dame giving up a lot of points, and it's okay if they give up 30? No, I'm not saying that.
That's not what we're saying at all.
If Notre Dame does what they're capable of doing, it's going to be an impressive performance. Rob has a super chat. He's taking his 13-year-old to the game. You guys rock. Rob, we're doing our tail. That's going to be this game. It's going to be next week. So yeah, hopefully if you're in there next week, we'll have the tailgate. But yeah, we're excited to get to the game this weekend too. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So
Vince, let's dive into this first match. So I want to wrap up. The point I'm making is this is going to be a good week 2 test for Notre Dame. This isn't your typical MAC team. This isn't Western Michigan from a few years ago. It's not Ball State. It's not Bowling Green. If Notre Dame handles business and wins like they should, it means they will have played well and earned it. That's the key for me. So, Vince, why don't you kick things off by talking about the Notre Dame. We're going to pull this up here, talking about the Notre Dame. Actually, we've already the Notre Dame. We're going to talk about the Notre Dame run game first. Let's kick into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously these are the 2020 numbers, and that's important that we talk about that, because the game that Notre Dame just played, they were really, really good against the run game in the first half, and they were very aggressive in the run game, which I really, really, really liked. I thought they dictated the tempo. I thought that they had the quarterback, Jordan Travis, throwing off schedule. I thought that the run game was really going nowhere, until they busted off that 89-yard run, right? And that was just some missed tackles and some things of that nature. So when you look at these numbers right here, Notre Dame's run defense was pretty darn good last year, right? 113 yards a game, 16th in the country. Yards per attempt, 3.8. That's 36 in the country. You'd like to see that number be a little bit better if they're going to be a championship quality defense. That's one area I'd like to see them improve a little bit. I'm okay with 113 yards a game personally. I think that's pretty darn good. And after game one, they're chasing that number. So, but I think that's going to get better. But then when you look at Toledo's run game, it wasn't terrible, right? They average 168 yards a game. That's good for 59th in the country. And then their yards per attempt, not as good, 4.2, which put them at 75, which is pretty much right down the middle in that neighborhood. It's okay. They only scored 8 touchdowns, though, which I find to be on the very low end of things. But that's because they like to throw the ball a little bit more, and they're not going to be dependent on their run game as much. So this is going to be an interesting one because I think Notre Dame has something to prove in this game, especially after the second half that they had. And I think that's really what I'm going to be keeping my eye on is can they play a full game, start to finish, and play the way they did the first half of the game.
I think the other thing, too, about this matchup, Vince, is, you talk about how important it is for Notre Dame to slow down the run game. These numbers, to me, are a little bit misleading to what Toledo has been in the past. And I think last year there was something, with COVID and everything, they averaged 168.2 yards per game. They were at 224.5 the year before that, 215.9 the year before that. So and then this, then they ran for 205 at 5.3 yards per carry against Norfolk State. So, and again, a lot of that was with their backup. So Bryant Koback only carried the ball 9 times for 52 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. So they're a better running team than their numbers showed a little bit last week. So this is also partly what to me makes Toledo dangerous. The whole big intro of the show, we were talking about, the quarterback and the passing game and the RPOs and all that kind of stuff. Well, this has been their bread and butter in recent years. Mm-hmm. And that ability to be balanced is partly what makes this a dangerous football team and what makes them a legitimate contender to win the MAC this year. And so, again, this is a game where if you're not disciplined, if you don't control the line of scrimmage, like you should, if you don't tackle well, if you're not disciplined, if you're not assignment correct, they're going to hurt you. Now, if Notre Dame does what they're supposed to do, they'll shut down the Toledo run game, right? And at the end of the day, understand that's where we're coming from. It would be really easy for us, because anyone can do this, to say, it's Toledo, they're a MAC team. If Notre Dame does what they should do, they should dominate. Oh, okay, sure, but that's not analysis, right? Anyone that has a Google can figure that out. The fact of the matter, however, is if we're going to look at this from a real football standpoint, this is the kind of test you want a week after playing Florida State.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is this, Vince, and I want to hear your opinion on this because you and I have actually never talked about this on the show. I had talked about this before you and I were able to finally team up after we've been trying to team up for a decade. I have always felt that when my teams would struggle with something or a team would give us a look that we had a hard time with, I was always fired up when we saw that, when we were going to see something similar the next week. Because I wanted to make my adjustments while it's still fresh on their mind. And it's one thing to make adjustments and then, you're not going to see that for 3 weeks.
Right.
I wanted to make my adjustments and then build it back into the game plan and then attack it again that next week. And when you look at the Marcus Freeman defense, to me, this is a great opportunity for them to say, hey, look, what are the things we struggled with last week, right? Athletes in space. Okay, Toledo's got those. A quarterback that can do things with his arm and his legs. Okay, Toledo's got a couple of those guys. An offense that with the RPOs is going to make it difficult for you. They're going to run those long rides, so the linebackers have to be sound and aggressive. The D-line has to penetrate, tackle, do all those things. Check, check, check. Mm-hmm. So all the things that you struggled with last week, you're going to have to do. You're going to have to be faced with those certain situations again, which to me is perfect for Marcus Freeman and Mike Elson and Mike Mickens and Chris O'Leary, because all the things that they wanted to correct on film this weekend are going to have to be put right into practice against Toledo.
That's a really good point.
I like that's all because I always liked that as a coach.
Yeah, that's a really good point. From my level, it was always odd fronts versus even fronts and things like that, because high school teams, if you're a 3 front, you're going to be a 3 front. If you're a 4 front, you're going to be a 4 front. There's not a lot of movement between the two. And so if we had a team that we were playing that was a 3 front, which is more of an the words. I was going to say it's more of an odd front, but yes, it's an odd front. But it's not as common. That's what I wanted to say. But when we would see that 2 weeks in a row, and if we struggled with it the first week and we talk about it in film, like, dude, with your center and the double team with your center and your guard and things of that nature and getting the snap off with a guy in your head and blah, 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 blah. And we would hammer it home in the film. And then if you had a forefront the next week, it's like, well, that didn't matter. Thanks for that coaching, coach. But then if you had that same front the next week, that it all parlays in, and then you see them execute, and it's like, yes, thank you. That's what we were looking for. It's wonderful. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And you make a good point. Now, are these athletes the same that they saw against Florida State? No, but it's the same type of offense. It's the same type of players that they saw against Florida State.
And they're good enough
to
where if you're still undisciplined,
you're going to get burned.
Like Brian Koback may not rip off an 89-yard run. I think they may be able to catch him, but because he's not as fast as Deshaun Corbin, but he's still going to hurt you if you make those same mistakes. If you're not able to. But the thing he also brings, he's a little thicker, a little stronger than these guys. So he's a nice one cut and go guy. You're going to have to be disciplined against this offense. And I think when you look at the run game, this is going to be a good test because the run game last week was good early, and then bam, you give up the big play, and then shutting them down again. And then the second half, once they went away from the 4 down and they went away from attacking, that's when Florida State piled up a bunch of yards on Notre Dame. So it was a little bit misleading at times. Florida State, other than a couple big runs, didn't really move the ball effectively against the Notre Dame defense with any consistency. It was the big plays. Then Notre Dame went away from what worked for them, and it was kind of the other thing. It was the bleeding out, the slow death. This week, you need to get back to being aggressive. You mix up your looks. Again, I'm okay with the 3-man stuff, but I need your roster right now is better in a 4 down.
Agree.
And now that you have all the injuries to linebacker, Shane Simon's out, Maris is out, Paul Moala is out, there's even more reason to be more of a 4 down team. And so that's the adjustments I want to see. What adjustments do you make as a coaching staff that's going to let us know that you're prepared to not repeat what we saw last week? And that's going to tell us a lot about Marcus Freeman. And I'm optimistic that he's going to look good doing it. And the staff is going to make good changes. And this is a good enough test to where we're going to find out if they're able to make those kind of quick adjustments on the fly.
Look, when everybody's healthy, I still think that they're better as a 4-front than they are as a 3-front. I'm okay with them mixing it up, obviously, because they have guys that can do that. But the point that you made about the fact that there's now injuries at the linebacker position and the depth is being tested at the linebacker position, I think you even go more, head into the 4-front looks. Yes, I still want them to mix it up a little bit, absolutely, because you need to keep offenses on their toes. But I think this team, their identity has to be a 4-front. It has to be. We saw them get some serious pressure as a 4-front. I mean, we were seeing, Jason Adamiola, Justin Adamiola. We were seeing those guys just absolutely penetrate. Foskey was getting in the backfield when they were in a 4-front. When they were in a 3-front, we didn't see as much penetration unless they were bringing a linebacker or unless they started Foskey off the line and then they were bringing him up, right? That's when we saw penetration, when you had 4 guys at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's when these guys are at their best. And now that the linebackers are being tested as far as the depth, I just think that has to be your identity, and that's going to be what I'm going to be looking for when they step out on the field on Saturday with Marcus Freeman, because he has to see it. If we see it, he sees it, right? And
we both agree Marcus Freeman's a pretty smart guy.
Absolutely.
And I know there are some people that think that all of a sudden think one game means he's not a good coach anymore. I don't see that. I don't see it that way. I think that they were actually doing a lot of what I expected. With a couple mistakes here and there, which you and I also said kind of be prepared for. But it was that once they went away from what they do, and that's why I say, don't go away from who you are. Be who you are. And if you want to call off the dogs and put your number 2s in there and let them run your defense. And they didn't do that, especially in the third quarter. So to me, I want to see those adjustments. I want to see what kind of motivator Marcus Freeman is to go out there and get those guys to handle adversity. Look, everything has been going great for him, right? Since he was hired, and recruiting's going well, and this is going well, and they dominated in the spring, and they did all those kind of things. Well, okay, now you face some adversity. How do you handle it? And that's the test, not for Marcus Freeman and Mike Elson and Mike Mickens and Crystal Lear, but that's going to be the test for the leadership of this football team at the player level. How do you respond to the struggles? And to me, this part of the game is we're going to find that out, because I want to see them kind of take that out on them. I want to see them take that out on Toledo. Because if you can take it on Toledo, this is a good football team. Again, this isn't New Mexico. This isn't Bowling Green, right? Does that mean you can't dominate them? I'm not saying that at all.
Right.
But what I am saying is that you have to be able to play your game in order to do that.
Well, and I feel like there's a possibility that Notre Dame could dominate and not play well. There is that possibility. But again, like we were talking about with the offense,
are you saying because their players are just so much better? Is that kind of what you're okay?
That's what I'm alluding to. Yes. But again, with the offense, like with the offensive line, we were talking about what we need to see that they're taking steps. I'm going to need to see similar things with the defense, right? Better contain, better tackling late in the game, things of that nature. That's going to make me feel really good about where this defense is, right?
Yeah. See, go ahead. I'm sorry, Vince. I thought
no. I was done. Yeah.
I know how. I didn't want to interrupt you. Please.
I've never said that to you, by the way.
I know. You just get your lackeys to do it for you. I know how it is. I know how it is. Get your buddies to do it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's what I like about the show. It is a back and forth.
Yes.
But I'm going to somewhat disagree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you 100% when we're talking about the matchup of the Notre Dame offense against the Toledo defense. I think Notre Dame could not necessarily play well and dominate, kind of like what they did to Florida State last week, right? There are some things they didn't really do well on offense, and they still had 400-some plus yards and 41 points, right? For me, it's more of this side of the ball. I don't think you can play bad or not well and still dominate, because I think the skill level, the overall talent of Toledo's better. The size of Toledo is a little better. They're not going to just physically overwhelm them like they can to overwhelm the Toledo defense. They've got some legitimately good size on their offensive line for a MAC team. I mean, their offensive line is 3'10", 6'6", 310, 6'4", 307, 6'3", 295, 6'4", 290, 6'4", 290. And they're kind of an or at right tackle between a 6'4", 290 guy and a 6'4", 315 guy. So there's some good size there. So I don't think Notre Dame can just overwhelm them with size and speed. There's enough athleticism where if Notre Dame doesn't play well, they're still going to probably win. They'd have to turn the ball over a bunch of times and things like that to lose. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I think if they don't play well, I do think that Toledo can hurt them and make this a closer game than it should be. So that's the one. So on this matchup, now the matchup from earlier, I'd agree with you 100%. 100%. But this matchup, I think, is going to be – they're not going to hold them to 13 points and not play well. Unless their quarterback just, sees this is Notre Dame Stadium, and he's hitting linebackers in the chest, right? Like, if that happens, sure, that you're correct. But assuming something like that happens, I think Toledo can score 24, 27. Okay. It's a lot like the matchup when we had about UMass in 2000. It's going to sound funny, but in 2015, I remember talking about Tajay Sharp back then. Like, this guy's going to play in the NFL, and he did. He played in the NFL for a while now. He's been a decent NFL player. And he had a quarterback that had a big arm, and there were some athletes that if Notre Dame doesn't play well, these guys are going to score, and they did. And that was against the Brian Van Gorder defense. This team is even better than that one because that team had a great NFL receiver, but this team has better talent all around and a better line. So that to me is a little bit of the difference.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I have more faith in what this front seven can do. I saw too many flashes of brilliance from this front seven in the first game. I just feel like if they play that way, there's nothing that Toledo's going to be able to do.
But see, to me, that's not playing bad, right? That's what I'm saying. Is you said if they can still dominate and not play well.
Okay.
What I'm saying is if they just play well, not dominant, but just well, they'll shut Toledo down for the most part. Okay. What I'm saying is if they play poorly, Toledo will hurt them.
Okay.
That's what I'm
fair.
saying. Notre Dame's offense could maybe not play that well and still just muscle up and outman Toledo's defense.
Right.
If Notre Dame plays,
what happens when Notre Dame's defense doesn't play well. They get run over. Run by.
Right. If Notre Dame's defense plays like it did the first 2.5 quarters against Florida State before they changed to their let's not attack anymore, Toledo doesn't have a chance. Because, as you said, there was a lot of dominant moments. Yes, they made some mistakes, and they may make some mistakes against Toledo and give up a big player or two, but they're still going to dominate because you can clean that stuff up. Exactly right, Vince.
Right.
You can clean that stuff up. You can clean that stuff up, right? Sure. But they may make some big plays, but you're not going to consistently move the ball up and down the field on the Notre Dame defense. And again, like I said, Toledo's got good talent. They don't have necessarily Florida State talent. Although
Mm-hmm.
I think their quarterback is a better passer than what we saw on Sunday night. So I think that would be one area where I'd push back a little bit on this particular matchup. So you want to talk about let's talk about the pass game, Vince.
All right.
This is where it's going to get interesting.
Yeah.
That's the part right there. Because we just talked about how they have thrown for, runs for 200 yards 3 of the last 4 seasons, except for last year. This part right here. So they've got 2 new co-coordinators. You look at what we talked about, what they did on defense, right? They brought in Vince Karras. Well, they hired two co-coordinators. One is Robert Weiner, and they brought him from Tampa Plant High School. He's a longtime high school coach. And they also hired, why am I drawing a blank on his name? I know who the guy is because he was a big-time D3 head coach when I was Mike Hallett. So they brought in Mike Hallett, who was at Heidelberg for a long time. Really good offensive mind. He's a guy that coached in Ohio, in the Midwest, when I was coming up as a D3 coach.
It's very interesting where they went and got their assistant coaches.
Yes.
Because
what he did, what he did, what he did, which is smart, Vince, is from a recruiting standpoint, he hired one legend and one guy that had a great reputation in Ohio at Heidelberg. Mm-hmm. So they're going to recruit that state, and they need to be able to recruit that state. They're going to dominate MAC recruiting, in my opinion, with those guys on staff.
Yeah, right.
But they're good football coaches, right?
Yes.
They're MAC guys, right? Like, I'm not like, hey, this guy's on my radar for Notre Dame to hire him as their next OC. I'm not saying that. But for that level, they know how to teach.
Yeah.
They're coaching D3 kids, right? So they're coaching kids that I coach, which means you're not just getting these kids that are just so talented that you can just roll the ball out and they're going to dominate. Right. You have to teach them how to play the game. It's the same thing at the MAC. You're not getting elite 5-star athletes that can just not know what they're doing and still dominate. You got to teach these kids how to play the game. And that's what I like about what Jason Candle is doing. He's getting teachers. And when you look at some of the better programs in the MAC over the years, it's guys that had great staffs top to bottom. You got to teach the game of football that eventually moved on to bigger and better things and stuff like that. But when Urban Meyer put his Bowling Green staff together, he got like a GA from Notre Dame and Syracuse and Dan Mullen. He got like he got these guys that were like, smaller level Division I coaches. He didn't go out and hire he didn't bring like Charlie Strong with them and all these D1, these guys that were Notre Dame and Florida and Ohio State. He brought guys that knew how to teach and knew how to coach. And I think that's what Jason Candle's doing.
You have to know what's on your team.
Yes.
And you also have to know how to recruit your area because MAC teams are more regional, obviously, right? And they'll pull some guys from all over, possibly. But you have to know how to recruit your region. And I think it's really smart to bring in a high school, a storied high school coach, a guy that's been a D3 head coach for a long time because his recruiting is also regional, right?
MAC recruit. You're going to recruit Florida, but here's the thing. A lot of people don't know. Mount Union and Heidelberg did the same thing we did when I was at Defiance. There's so many talented players in Florida that there's not a lot of D2 and 1AA schools in Florida.
Sure.
I don't even know if Jacksonville U still has a football team. There's like Florida Tech. There's not a lot, right? So what we would do is they'd have these recruiting fairs down in Florida. And we'd send coaches down there. I'd send 3 of my coaches down there. We'd have them go to these fairs, and then I'd organize, hey, here's the high schools you're going to go to. Well, Mount Union did the same thing. So these guys at Heidelberg did the same thing. So they have connections in Florida as well.
Sure.
So sorry, that comment from Tommy Guns is free. Dang it, Brian, stop interrupting our cousin Vinny. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's so awesome. So when I look at that, Vince, that's the other place they got to go. They got to recruit the Midwest hard, but then you got to go find some guys down in the state of Florida and Georgia that can go play, and that's what a lot of these guys are bringing to the table. So that's kind of an overview of Toledo, but I want to get back on track to this part of the game right here. I'm always going to get there because I'm like pointing at it like I'm actually pointing at it on my screen.
I know,
but it's actually over here. So I've got to point away from where I want to go. Right.
It's opposite.
Very explosive pass offense last year. Now, some of this is a tad misleading. And what I mean by that, Vince, is when you only play 6 games, one big game can kind of skew the numbers a little bit. And they had a couple – they had 2 400-yard games, like late in the year, games 4 and 5 were over 400 yards. They also threw 7 picks in 6 games. So, there's some things they got to clean up, turning the ball over.
That's what stood out to me, to be honest with you.
Right. Was the 6 picks in the last 3 games.
Right.
But big plays, right? High completion percentage, big plays. And a lot of that comes off the RPOs. A lot of those big plays aren't bombs. Like they threw an 80-some yard touchdown pass against Norfolk State on just a dig route. The guy caught it near midfield and just outran the defense. Devin Maddox just outran the defense. You're going to see stuff like that. They have playmakers like, so if you're not in position, if you're trying to go for kill shots as a tackler, and they're going to make you miss, and they're going to rip off big plays. And so that's the thing for me that Notre Dame's going to have to eliminate in the pass game is eliminate those big after the catch plays. Don't be disciplined against the RPOs because what you want to do is you want to drag the completion percentage down, right? So if you look at their lowest scoring outlet of the season last year, worst offensive output of the season last year was against Central Michigan. And in that game, they completed 54.4% of their passes, right? Turned the ball over 3 times.
Right.
And so, that was their lowest yards per attempt. They only averaged 5.14 yards per attempt or yards per play that game, which was their lowest of the season. It was the 391 yards was over 50 yards lower than anything they had done all season. And a big part of that was Central Michigan was able to create a lot of misses and mistakes. Not only 3 turnovers, which was huge, but the 3 turnovers were built around a pass offense that also only completed 54.5% of their passes. And so that's the difference. Whereas they turned the ball over a little bit against Ball State and didn't score a lot, but they completed 75% of their passes. They were able to move the ball. And so to me, that's the big thing for me is Notre Dame has got to be able to create misses essentially in the pass game, being aggressive up front, being disruptive, disciplined. If you're a safety and you stay on your target, don't read your key, right? If you're reading the backside X, read the backside X. Don't start peeking into the backfield like you did last week.
And that's when safeties get in trouble, is when they start peeking, and that's when you have breakdowns in coverage and the guy gets behind you.
Yes. So this is the match to watch, right? If you can control this part, then I think. So Vince is out of the thing again. He's been having some connection problems tonight. So this is the matchup that Notre Dame has to be able to contain. This is the part of the game. Whereas last week, Vince, we were worried about the big plays in the run game with Florida State. This week, I'm worried about the big plays in the pass game more than I'm worried about the big plays in the run game. Yeah, my biggest concern is I'm concerned with them hammering the run game, like just chipping away with the run game, and then that creates the big plays down the field or after the catch. I think that's my nightmare scenario in this matchup. That's it for me. But this is the part of the game that could present Notre Dame with the most problems.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really going to be a good test for these corners and for the safeties, because you and I both think the corners played a really good game against Florida State. I mean, in your words, they were sticky, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this is going to be a really good test for them to quote unquote stay in their lane. They need to continue to do what they're supposed to do. Don't be peeking in the backfield. Don't be worrying about the run game when it comes up. Yeah, make the play when you need to make the play, but don't let a guy get loose because you think it's going to be a run play, right? I mean, that's going to be very, very important. And this is also where I think if I'm coaching at Toledo, and clearly the RPO game is part of their offense, I really think that's going to be a huge part of their offense against Notre Dame, because that's an offense where you are making the defense wrong, right? And that's where you can benefit, even though you're outmatched from a player-to-player standpoint. Like, you're not going to be going one-on-ones against Notre Dame's players because, in theory, Notre Dame's players are better, right? But this is an opportunity. If a linebacker takes a wrong step, or if he covers the wrong guy, or if he goes here or he goes there, that's when the RPO game can really benefit you, because you're not playing 1 versus 1. You're playing guy versus space, essentially. And that's where I think Toledo could take advantage of Notre Dame if they get sloppy with their technique and if they're not in the right position. And so I think that's something really to keep an eye on, because if I'm the offensive coordinator for Toledo, that's the kind of offense that I'm going to be running against Notre Dame.
that's who you are. You've got to be who you are.
Absolutely.
And that's their strength. If you're not afraid to attack Notre Dame with your strength, then you might as well just call them and say, hey, look, guys, we don't want to take a chance getting hurt this weekend. We're just gonna give this one to you. Okay. You got to go after them with your strength. And it's because again, with Toledo, winning is not the only way to build your team for the future in this matchup. If you can just be competitive with Notre Dame and says, hey guys, look, we played our game, we did this, we did that, we executed, and we took a playoff team, into the fourth quarter, right? That's also a momentum builder. And the coaches know that. And so not only are they going to do this, but you can surely expect, Vince, for them to do reverses, trick plays, gadget plays, things like that. Not a ton, but enough to keep Notre Dame on their heels. Because if they get Notre Dame on their heels, that's the key. For Notre Dame, the opposite is true, right? You've got to dominate the line of scrimmage. You've got to not let him ride those fakes out, because if he's going to do that, that's fine, because by the time you pull that thing out, we're on you. Pop. Jason Adamiole, Foskey, Myron, Kurt, they're going to be on you. Yeah. You better pull that sucker and get it out quick. Well, you rush an RPO, that's when Kyle Hamilton steps in front of one and says, peace out, right?
Because there's a reason that there's a long ride there, because he's reading it. It needs that amount of time, right? And if you don't give him that amount of time, now you're blowing everything up that they're trying to do. And you're right. That's where Kyle Hamilton can eat.
Yes. So that's the matchup, Vince, that they have to be prepared for. That's the matchup, to me, that could present the most problems. There's legitimate talent for this football team at wide receiver. I mean, there's we talked about Carter Bradley. I like him. I really do like him at quarterback. I think Bryant Koback is a good runner. When I look at this team, I see Devin Maddox, as I talked about, had a huge play last week. He's a small or shifty guy. Denzel McKinley-Lewis, Jerwan Newton. Those are faster guys. Then they have guys like Isaiah Winstead and Bryce Mitchell, Matt Landers, who we talked about, the transfer from Georgia, who are some more of the bigger receivers. So they got that nice blend that I love, right? They've got the guys can win on one-on-ones on the outside. They've got those more athletic guys do things after the catch. So it's an interesting matchup. So, Vince, before we go, I need to break some news. I just reported that on Twitter, and I'm putting it out now. I'm going to put it out on Twitter, but I wanted to give it to you all first. Lawrence Keys III is leaving the team. Wow. And he is obviously frustrated with how things have gone for a little while now. And I talked to multiple sources today. He did inform his teammates and the coaches that he's going to sit out the remainder of the year. Focus on getting his degree. He is scheduled to graduate in December, and then he is going to figure out what's next for him.
Wow.
I don't know if there's going to be another this season, but I'm told he's not alone at that position. He's now the fifth wide receiver to leave the team via transfer since the 2020 season ended.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that's a problem by now, and we're going to hear the spin of, he's this. Look, this is a problem. I don't know how else you can say it, but to have this many players leave one position in one offseason, that's problematic. So that is the breaking news. I'm getting ready to tweet this out, Vince, but I wanted to make sure that the IB family heard it here first. So that's a little bit of breaking news for you.
Wow, you're not kidding. Holy smokes. And you're right. It's a red flag. That's the nicest way to put it, to be honest with you. When it's one position, look, there's going to be attrition on college football teams, especially good ones, right? There's going to be that's going to happen because guys come, they want to play, and not everybody can play.
Right.
But when it's chronically one position, that's the issue.
Yeah, and I can tell you that it's not just about guys not playing. It's what they're being told and then not told.
Right.
That to me is the bigger issue. And we have a huge super chat from Kevin Dillon. So Kevin, I appreciate that. I appreciate that very, 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 very much. Very, very much.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
Yes, I appreciate that very much. So that's the breaking news. Lawrence Keys. Let's take this down so we can kind of focus on this. This is a big loss for Notre Dame because this hurts their personnel. This hurts their personnel quite a bit, in my opinion. You're talking about a guy that was the sort of the standout all spring. We talked about this every single practice video we got. Lawrence Keys was making plays. He went out and made plays in the blue gold game. I don't put too much on the blue gold game because my stance on that, right? It's the blue gold game. But when that follows what you kind of did every day in practice, I've talked to different sources about, how the DBs have a hard time guarding him and he gets open, but for whatever reason, Dale Alexander, when they got to Florida State, went right back to the way of we're going to have a short bench.
Right.
And here's where that's disconcerting. If they stay healthy the rest of the year and nobody gets hurt and everybody plays to their potential, they'll be okay. Right. I mean, Kevin Austin's a beast. Braden Lindsey's really good. Avery Davis is a really good player. Xavier Watts, they've got, Joe Wilkins, Lorenzo Stout, but you're assuming no one else is going to get hurt. Your two best receivers are guys that have been prone to being injured or missing time. You now lose one of them, you are now screwed. You're now in trouble, in my opinion. And it's all because there's just a failure to communicate. There's a lack of trust there. We remember what Connor Radigan said in his thing about it takes a while to gain trust. And it sounds like there's just not a lot of, he's making the players earn his trust. Well, as a coach, I also have to earn the players' trust.
Right.
And that's not happening.
Right.
And that's problematic. And for a kid that this is a kid that people tried to talk into transferring last year after the season. And he said, no, I'm staying it out. I'm staying it out. Like, I want to be here. I want to graduate. I want to play with my team. For that to deteriorate from what I was told by sources, that he wanted to stay. There's no way he was transferring because people around him were trying to, there was influences that want him to transfer, like all these kids go through. And he was adamant, nope, not going anywhere. His family was very supportive of that. They didn't want him to go anywhere. For that relationship to deteriorate this quickly, to where after one game, and he was prepared from what I was kind of given a heads up on this over the weekend that he was going to go in and talk to the coaches and say, hey, what do I need to do? He wasn't planning on leaving. Those conversations said, okay, well, after that,
there's no point sticking around.
Right.
That's what it tells me. That's what that tells me. It tells me that, and look, this is my speculation. This is not something that, Lawrence told me on the phone or anything. Right. But if he had those conversations and going in and said, trying to figure out what he needs to do to get on the field, and he left saying it's better off that I just leave, that is very disturbing to me, because that means the coaches were like, yeah, okay, that's fine. You can go. That you're just a depth piece for us. We don't see you getting on the field anytime soon. Whatever the conversation was, it led him to leave. And that is disturbing beyond measure to me, because the way I looked at things, the way I saw spring and I saw those videos and I saw, fall and everything, I kind of looked at Avery Davis and Lawrence Keys as like an or situation. Right. It was like both of those guys
use both of them.
Right. Like evenly, you know what I mean? Like whoever starts, okay, whatever, you know what I mean? You make those snaps even, and either one of those guys can be dynamic for you. And so that's, when you tell me that disturbs me even more. Yeah, that the coaches basically pushed him out the door.
I wouldn't say they pushed him out the door. I wouldn't say that. I would say, I don't think they wanted him to leave. I'm pretty confident they didn't want him to leave. It was just, again, I think the responses to his frustration of, I do all these things, and then the week leading up to the game, all of a sudden my circumstance changes and I'm not playing. I'm not happy about that. And the response to that at the position coach level was such that it was like, okay, nothing's going to change.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do to change.
Right.
And I think that was, from talking to some sources, that was, I think, where the frustration was, is it's one thing to not be playing. It's another thing to not be giving any guidance on what I can do differently.
Right.
And then be told one thing, and then you do that, and then it's like, well, okay, but now it's something different. And I think
that's the problem.
That was the frustration, is like, you tell me I need to do this, and then I do that, and then it's now you've moved the goalpost, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the problem is. And so this leaves them in a precarious situation, and people can say, oh, now you've got an extra scholarship for 2022. Okay. But what's to say this isn't going to continue happening?
Right.
And what's to say anything's going to be different? It's not as simple as just saying, well, there are more scholarships for next year or whatever the case may be. So that means you recruit more players next year that it's going to take you 3 years to develop.
Right. And, look, it doesn't take much for Ohio State or whoever that you're recruiting against to be like, hey, you're a really good receiver, and look how many receivers they've lost over the last 2 years, 3 years, whatever, whatever they want to use. It's
Right.
it's right there for them, man.
And look, not every situation is the same, but after a while, you have to start picking up a pattern at one position. Either they're just super unlucky at that position, or there's a problem. And look, you say, well, this guy did this problem, this guy had that problem. I mean, all those things are true, but I can tell you at the core of all these situations was a lack of leadership at the top of that position group, even though all the circumstances were different. And so to me, I just look at it and say that when this continues to happen at one position, if this doesn't wake Brian Kelly up, I don't know what will.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't think it will. I think it's been very easy to dismiss the guys that are leaving. Say, oh, it was him. And that's what they've pretty much done at this point in time. And so this is a problem. This is going to have to get addressed because you just can't keep hemorrhaging players from one position and guys that were,
right.
Had talent, had potential. Kevin Leber-Rahman needed work, but he had potential. Jordan Johnson has potential. Jay Brunell has potential. Lawrence Keys Jr. the third has a potential. These guys all should be productive.
Lawrence
players.
Keys he showed what he's got on the field. Like
whenever he was given a chance, he just was never given a chance.
But I mean, when he was on the field, he did great things. Like he made some dynamic plays.
Right.
That's what bothers me the most. It's not like we're talking about a kid who is part of the depth chart, who we never really saw do anything at Notre Dame. Blah 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 blah. We saw him do stuff. Good stuff, and he's still leaving, and they're still allowing him to leave, and that's a problem. It's a problem.
Right. Kevin Dillon with another super chat. Man, Kevin, I appreciate that very much. It's a recruiting nightmare at Notre Dame, and I think you're right. And look, the class they have coming in, it's an excellent class, but I mean, again, Tobias Merriweather should have been recruited by bigger schools, but he wasn't. They didn't beat Oklahoma for him. They didn't beat Alabama for them. Now they beat some of those schools for CJ Williams, but CJ Williams he's been a Notre Dame fan for a long time. I'm not trying to take away from it, but also I'd give a lot of that credit to Tommy Rees, not Dale Alexander. And this isn't the first time that you've had receivers leave in the middle of the season. Michael Young did that.
Right.
I mean, to the point where he was just so frustrated with how it was going that it was like, hey, you know what? Like, why am I even here?
Right.
So again, if you want to continue to just blame every single one of the players and just say that every single time it's only happening, it's just those receivers, they're selfish players. It's not happening anywhere else. It's just those guys. It's all them. You can do that and put your head in the sand and say that, or you can say, you know what, this is just happening too much.
Yeah, maybe we need to look in the mirror. Like, maybe this is an us problem and it's not a them problem, right? Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
It's just so everybody knows, I had no idea this was coming. Brian didn't share this with me, so this is my reaction. Because I'm getting it when you guys are getting it, and it's devastating to me. This one hits me hard. I was so excited to watch.
You're very high on Lawrence Keys because what you saw from him in practice in the spring.
Yes, absolutely. I was so excited to see him make plays. I mean, he was essentially a starter to me. Even though Avery Davis is a starter, Lawrence Keys was a starter too. And he was going to make plays this year. And this is tough. This is really hard. You got that one from John?
Yep, John A1. Thanks for being with us, John. Can Indy win a national championship with these kind of program impediments? This is ridiculous. BK needs to jump on his staff now. Thanks for explaining this, IB. It's always something. And look, they're not going to like this. They're not going to like that we broke the story. They're not going to like that we're talking like the way we are. They don't like that. But this is my job. My job is not to defend the staff. My job is to not smooth things over for the staff. My job is not to that. My job is to be honest with Notre Dame fans. And to John's point, this is one of those things on this side of the ball that you have to address it. You can't recruit elite receivers when it takes them 3-4 years to get going.
Right.
You can't. You can't recruit elite receivers when Ohio State's getting these kids ready to play early on, years 1 and 2, and it takes them 3-4 years. You can't do it. And you're going to get some kids here and there, but overall, you're going to lose out on more than you want. What I'm hearing about the latest with Cardinal Tate, it's not looking good for Notre Dame. And you're going to lose a Chicago Catholic school kid to probably Ohio State the way things are going. Now, there's time to turn it around.
Sure.
And really the only reason that you're in the game, from what I'm told from sources, is Tommy Rees, not Dell, which, again, it's –
and that's not surprising.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to disparage anybody.
Dell did a great job with Tobias Merriweather. I'll give him credit for that one. But you can't just recruit one guy. You got to recruit multiple guys.
There's more, and because Notre Dame doesn't run, 3 tight ends all the time with one receiver. Like, that's not their offense, right? the philosophical change of Notre Dame's offense was what we've been calling for, requires multiple receivers.
Right.
So you need to recruit multiple receivers every single year. That needs to be one of your deepest positions, frankly. And this is not the way to go about doing that at all.
Yep. So I do want to address something here real quick. My guy, OC Irish fan, says, come on, Brian, lose the red tumbler, go blue, go gold, go green, or go home. So you're going to feel really bad when I tell you this. So you want to know why I'm rocking this microphone? You see, or this, see what it says? Hometown Heroes. This is a 9/11 commemorative cup.
Oh.
Right. And that is a moment that still affects me.
Can you drop the mic on that one?
No, I mean, he didn't know.
I know.
He didn't know. He's just having some fun. It's all good.
I know. I
just want people to understand why. I normally has an IB thing or a Notre Dame thing, but there's a reason for this, and it's this right here. And since that is coming up this weekend, I felt that it was appropriate to have that on there. So that's why I've had the red tumbler. It won't be around forever, but I felt like it was an appropriate thing this week to have. Because it's the 20-year anniversary is coming.
And I'm going to get on my soapbox here real quick. Since I teach kids every day, tell your kids about 9/11 because they don't know about it. I'm being dead serious.
Don't do this. We love you. You didn't know.
No, that's not the point.
You didn't know.
No,
we love you, OC Irish fan.
Yeah,
I just want people to understand why. I have that red tumbler. So anyway, Vince, please.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I taught middle school for a while, and I teach high school now. These kids don't know about 9/11. Right. They don't understand what happened. And I sat my own children down and we watched a documentary and we talked about it. And it's powerful to them when it's explained to them because they didn't live through it. And it's hard for us to fathom that because it seems like yesterday to us adults, right? It does to me. And I think about it, and I was in college when it happened, and it seems like yesterday. But our kids have no idea what happened. High school seniors really have no idea what happened because they weren't even alive.
Right.
So talk to your kids. Talk to, young people about 9/11 so that they don't forget, because that was one of the most powerful times. That post 9/11 was one of the most powerful times in America. And I still firmly believe that. I've never seen America so together as we did after 9/11. And it was powerful. And America needs that right now. So I'm just going to say that, but teach your kids about it. I'm trying to, even though I teach PE now, because I was a history teacher, we talk about it, man, and it just needs to be talked about. So I'll get off my soapbox now. I know we're talking Notre Dame football.
That's all good.
But yeah, I needed to get that off my chest.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so Vince, that's the deal. That's the deal. So I feel like it's going to be kind of it's going to be a bit challenging to kind of jump back on.
I know, right?
Like, okay, so back to Notre Dame football. But yeah, this is a loss for Notre Dame. Right, this Lawrence Key situation, and again, I feel like it's hard sometimes to have a rational conversation about this because some people say, well, he's got to earn it. Well, okay, what else do you have to do to earn it but dominate in practice and blow up in the blue gold game and do all this other kind of stuff? You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, your players got to play guys. They got to play guys, right? Coaches got to decide to play guys. Excuse me, and this has been a problem for years. This lack of any kind of bench has been a problem for years. Notre Dame's head coach complained about not having playmakers against Clemson when he had 2 6'4" guys that ran 4.42s on the field, but then he had Braden Lindsey, Lawrence Keys, and Kevin Austin and Cole Kmet sitting on the sidelines of that game in 2018. Right. So at some point in time, you've got to be able to say, like, look, this isn't okay. Right. And say, well, they've got this guy and this guy. Well, what are you going to say? Bench Braden Lindsey or every day? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying do what every other good team does. If you have 5 playmakers and you play 5 playmakers.
Right. Exactly.
Right? If you've got
find
6
a way,
and it can be hard. Look, I was talking to my dad about this earlier today. Sorry, Vince. My dad's the only other person that knew about this one because I was frustrated by it because look, I know how hard it can be to get a 6-7 man rotation going. And that's why I've in the past said, you can't really go past 5. And you definitely don't really want to go past 6. It's just hard to get guys into a flow. But I've had to do that before because you just had so much talent. Like, how do I justify not having my fastest kid on the field, even though he's right now my number 6 receiver? I got to figure out a way to get him going. That's what good coaches have to do. And to me, that's just something that Dell never did. I'm going to play my starters and we're just going to go. And I'm occasionally put guys in as a breather. Like Lorenzo Styles got 1 snap against Florida State. And it was after Braden Lindsey had run a couple of straight go routes and he tapped out and they just threw Lorenzo in there real quick. Then Braden went back in that very next play. And that's all they did with Lawrence Keys is just when somebody needed a breather, they put him in the game. Played 5 snaps, like 5 or 6 snaps. So it's an issue that has to get addressed. I don't know what you can do about it right now. I think Tommy Reese and Brian Kelly are going to have to step in at some point in time and say, we've got to figure something out.
This has to be better. Yeah.
Right. This has to, explain to me why we're not getting the freshmen ready to go. Right. Explain to me why we can't get Lawrence Keys ready to go. It's frustrating.
It is. I agree with you. And it's not the news I was looking for tonight. So I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you.
So anyone that's jumping on late, just refer to them to the front page at irishbreakdown.com. So I'm talking to people in the chat. There's going to be people jumping on, wanting to know what's going on. I have a story about it on irishbreakdown.com. We just broke the news. I've kind of done everything I need to do to make sure that people were okay with this being out. I got all the permissions I needed to get. So, that's why I was hoping to do it before the show, but I had to hear back from some people to make sure it was okay. And that's kind of why I was typing in the middle of the show.
I saw you work. I could tell something was up.
You don't normally do that, right?
I could tell something was up, man.
Yeah. But he's not alone. Now, are other players definitely going to leave? I'm not saying that. I just know he's not the only unhappy camper on the football at that position. And again, I hear this at that position. I don't hear this at running back. I don't hear this at tight end. I don't hear this in the D line. I don't hear this at linebacker. I don't hear this in the secondary.
I don't think it's a program problem.
I hear it there.
Right.
I hear it there. That's the issue. And Truman Dumel, my man, thank you so much. Truman with a super sticker. I appreciate you very, 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 very much. That's Truman also had followed up with a question about will Diggs and estimate other freshmen play versus Toledo. That's a great segue back to our conversation. Very, very well done, Truman, getting us back on track. So let's get back to Toledo and Notre Dame. And I'll say this, if the freshman skill players are going to play, the defense is going to have to make stops early.
Yes.
That to me is the big key to this game, because when you look at, we're going to get to the scoring offense and defense now. Right? You look at those numbers for Toledo. It's kind of like what we talked about of the Notre Dame offense against Toledo defense. They're very similar. Very good scoring offenses, very good total offenses and defenses. Not great in the red zone. Really good on third down. Right? That's how these two teams are. So Notre Dame's going to have to be at their best, because to me, the best way to stop this to blow Toledo out, which is ultimately what should happen, is that you need to make early stops, and then the offense has to then go out and make plays. You can't let them hang around like you do with Florida State. That's what you and I talked about when we were wrapping up the Florida State game, Vince. Notre Dame should have been on Florida State like 24-7, like by the end of the first quarter.
Absolutely.
It should have been over. I mean, Florida State, hey, you want to ride those read zones and do all that stuff? Fine, go for it, because you're down 3 touchdowns. Right. And then just pile it on. You've got to take advantage of those things on offense. But the way that you can do that is you can't let Toledo get an early rhythm. And I think when you look at this right here, Vince, if they get confidence, if they get into a rhythm, then you're in trouble. And we saw that Sunday night. Florida State lived on 2 big plays. That's really what they had. It's all outside of like one decent series, they had 2 big plays. That's it. That's the only reason they were in the game. It's 38-20 because of 2 big plays. Notre Dame's ready to run them off the field. Then Notre Dame went away from what they do, and that resulted in Notre Dame letting them back in the game. Because once they got into that rhythm, then it was a lot harder to get them out of it. You have to do that early. Right. You have to get them out of sync early. You have to get them into 3rd and longs early. This is going to be another big test for the defensive line, but I thought the defensive line, when they were in their base defense, was really good last week. I think some of the linebackers got to step up, but really the safeties have to step up in the run game. Some of the safeties and the linebackers in the defensive line have to make sure when you get guys in space, you got to bring them down this week. Tackle well and eliminate some of those mistakes. You know, Riley Mills can't shoot the inside gap when he's supposed to be slanting away from the double stunt, right? You can't open up that big hole. But if that happens, the safety can't whiff 5-6 yards down the field. Clean up those mistakes, because if you can keep Toledo off the board, or you look at that red zone number right there, Vince, if you can make them have to kick field goals instead of touchdowns, that's all of a sudden they got 3 scores, you got 3 scores, and it's 21-9.
Right.
you're up 2 scores, right? That's where it has to be. And so that's, to me, this is going to be the key right here is Notre Dame scoring defense against Toledo scoring offense. And a lot of people aren't going to respect it if Notre Dame shuts Toledo down. I know a lot of people are going to, it's Toledo, it's a MAC school, and that's all true. But this is a team that can score. If you can hold them under 20, that's a really good performance, in my opinion. But it's going to have to start early. If you start on them early, Vince, this is what I always feel about teams like this that are talented but inferior to you. If you shut them down early and take them out of their game early, they can't recover because they don't have that individual player. They can just say, hey, look, like Notre Dame. If that happens, hey, look, we got to get Mayer involved, man. We got to get Kyron going. We got to get Austin going because we're struggling, right? We've got that guy, that dude. They don't have that. It's more system and execution oriented. If Notre Dame can dominate in the trenches and get them out of rhythm and get them off their game early, they don't have that dude that they can go to get them back. And to me, that's going to be the key. It's going to be the start. It's going to be the start. Last week, we focused on the start with the offense. This week, the focus on the start is going to be on the defense. If the defense can start fast and get them out of rhythm, Toledo's going to have a tough time.
Well, and I think it goes even deeper than that for me. Yes, start fast, absolutely, but then sustain that, right? Because I think they started fast against Florida State. I was really impressed with what I was sitting back. I was like, okay, Marcus Freeman in the house. Here we go. Pressure. This is good stuff.
I mean, they were all over him.
Yes, absolutely. And I was like, game over. Like Jordan Travis he looked out of sync. He looked like he didn't want the ball in his hands at all. I mean, it was great. They need to sustain that, right? And I have complete faith that Notre Dame will come out fast on defense. I do. Mm-hmm. But can they sustain that the rest of the way? And can they sustain it with the next group of guys? Right? Whether that's piecemealing it in as you go when you're still, when the game's still a game, or if they put all the 2s in or whatever when the game is later on. I want them to keep their foot on the gas defensively. I don't want them to get back in that, okay, we're just going to play base defense and we're not really going to get in the backfield and blah, 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 blah. Like, I want pressure. They got to keep that up. That has to be their identity, and it needs to be their identity from the first whistle to the last whistle. That's where I'm at. And so it's a little bit further for me.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting test, Vince, and I think that's the key. And again, when we mean test, understand where we're coming from. It's not a test where we're like, oh, geez, if they don't play their game, they're going to get beat. Right. I don't believe that. I think they'd have to collapse to lose this game. It's more about building for the season. And to me, this is kind of that type of team that presents a good enough challenge to where you've got to play well to win the way that you should. That's what I am saying. I do think that is true. And that's what I like about this matchup. And you and I talked about it this summer, Vince, was they're not really playing teams early in the season that can necessarily beat them. I don't think Purdue can beat them unless they just
collapse. And then,
I
mean, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. They just are. Yeah.
Agree. So, that's,
I know you're kind of at a loss for words. I'm
trying to get people out of it. I'm trying to kick people out of the chat and blah, 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 blah.
Well, that one that keeps coming back, I was starting to get an error. I kicked him out so many times.
Yeah. So I don't know what the heck's going on there, but we're getting him out of there.
Anyway.
Okay. So
we got like roboted. There's like
I know, right? That means we're growing. No, I'm serious.
Right.
Like, that's what that means is we're growing, is because now there's enough people in here that people want to troll, the bots are coming.
Yeah, right.
So, whatever. But that person's booted out. We won't see any more of those. But so anyway, so that's this matchup. And I'm excited about this matchup, Vince, because I think we're going to learn a lot about this Notre Dame team's mentality. We're going to learn a lot about this Notre Dame team's leadership in how they respond. After the game you just had, if you come out and you're thinking you're just going to roll over Toledo, that tells me this team has a leadership problem. Big time.
Yeah.
At a coaching and more so at a player, because this is a player thing. The mentality thing is a player-led thing. I know we like to blame coaches for everything, and we've done some of that in tonight's show. But when it comes to being ready to play a game, I think that's just as much on the player's leadership on the player level than it is at the coach level, if not more so sometimes. And so to me, I want to see that. I want to see this team fired up. Mm-hmm. I want to see them come out hungry, angry even, that people are doubting them or that they had to, go 4 quarters against them. I want to see them come out and say, hey, we're going to put this one away quick. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that mentality of, remember when they lost to Georgia? And I remember Drew Tranquil is a strong Christian kid and never swears. It doesn't seem like he's always got these really nice things to say. He's always got a smile on his face. And after they lost to Georgia, he had his hood over his head, and he was like, you could just tell he wanted to scream. He was like, I just feel really bad for the teams that we're going to play moving forward. And it's fine to say that, but then they went out and did that. They went for over that's 5 leadership. Bills on the ground the next week against BC. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's leadership.
That's leadership. And it was Drew, it was Q, it was McGlinchey, it was the leadership of that team that said, hey, no more.
Right.
Because Brian Kelly, and this is a defensive, Brian Kelly can say all the inspirational things he wants to say. If the leadership is at the player level isn't strong, it's going to go in one ear and out the other.
Right.
That's where accountability has to be in a lot of ways when it comes to how do you respond to adversity. And I think this team's going to respond well to it. And that's what I'm looking. I guess that's partly where my excitement is sure. I want to see what I believe to be about this team confirmed, which is I think the leadership is going to be there, which is why they won the game Sunday night.
Absolutely.
Because if they didn't have leadership,
I agree.
Look, when that game went into overtime, to be honest, I think I might have said this episode, I thought they're going to lose. Because Florida State had all of them. It was Texas 2016. And I remember people bringing up Texas 2016 before that. I'm like, come on, guys. It's going to be Texas 2016. This is a different program now. But when they went to overtime, I was like, yep, Texas 2016.
Yeah.
But it wasn't 2016 because this team has leadership. The defense stepped up. The offense didn't turn the ball over, although they weren't given a chance.
They weren't trying to.
Then the special team stepped up and got the job done. Right. The defense, kind of gutted up a little bit late in the fourth quarter and didn't allow a touchdown, held them to a field goal. Those things matter. And that's some resiliency that I see when they were tired, they were fatigued, they were worn out, but they said, that doesn't matter. We got to make a play. We got to win this game. And that tells me this team that was step 1 to leadership. Step 2 is how do you come out this week? And I think they're going to come out fired up this week. I really do. And it needs to show in how you play, Vince, but also like from a fire and intensity standpoint, but also from an execution standpoint.
And I will say this just to add on, because I agree with everything that you said, but just to add that this is obviously the first home game in a year and a half where there's actually going to be fans there. Look, you say what you want about crowds and crowd noise. I know I love that comment, by the way. Anthony Solomon, Brian Block's better than our offensive line. That's apropos right there, my friend. But I saw the way Florida State fed off their crowd because they did. They fed off their crowd in that game on Sunday night. This is going to be the best crowd that Notre Dame Stadium's ever seen for a MAC opponent, okay? Because it's been so stinking long since there's been a full stadium there. I think it's going to be part of this game. I really do. I think the players are going to feed off this crowd. I think they're going to be fired up with this crowd. I think it's going to be unbelievable atmosphere. And I think it's going to favor Notre Dame. And if that will be even more of a testament in a negative way if they can't get up for this game with the crowd that's going to be in that stadium.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think they will. I mean,
yeah, I think they will too.
How you're prep? I mean, because you're trying to just look at it from an objective, we're going to learn standpoint, like I was, which is totally spot on. I think they will, Vince. I mean, you kind of said it, but I mean, do you think do you anticipate? Not do you hope that they will or think that they will, but do you expect them? I mean, do you feel this team has that kind of player-led leadership that they are going to come out and respond the right way?
Well, we're talking about the defense, right? And
Correct.
I believe,
but I think it feeds off each other,
But I believe number one, I think there's really good leadership on the defensive side, right? And that comes from the players and the defensive coordinator. I don't think Marcus Freeman's going to allow this team to play the way that they did in the first game, and I'm not just riding the Marcus Freeman train. I firmly believe he's too good of a coach to allow that performance to frame this defense. And I'm not saying it's because of him and like what he wants to do and all. He's too.
That's called being a leader of a defense. I mean,
that's exactly right. And he's too good of a coach to allow that to be his product. And so I firmly believe that they're going to come out fired up. They're going to come out with a whole new attitude because of the leadership with the kids and because Marcus Freeman is the head of that defense. So I absolutely think it's going to happen. Yes.
So that's what we think is going to happen this week, Vince. So hey, you know what? Let's Vince, do you have a little bit of time? Can we work through?
Yeah, we can do a little bit. We
Okay,
can
so
do a
that's
little. We're
gonna
just
wrap
disappointing
up
my
our.
son who thinks the internet goes way down when we're doing shows.
Well, you know what? It's 9:12. He needs to be in bed anyway. He's got a couple games. He's got two games tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
He's got a
two
soccer
games.
and a football game tomorrow, so he needs to be in
right.
bed anyway. It's not good to be staring at your computer that late at night anyway. So you tell Dylan if he needs time, he needs to do something to work off the energy. My lawn needs mowed. So,
I love it.
But after the job he did last time, I don't think it's going to work out too well. We have lights in our backyard, buddy. We'll hook it up. Man. He can see it. But that's going to do it for our Toledo offense versus Notre Dame defense breakdown. I'm excited. Look, I just like watching well-coached football teams go at it. And I know that Notre Dame has way better players and all that, but I like this Toledo football team. I think Jason Candle's program was at a point where they'd kind of gotten stale. It had that 11-2 season. Then the last couple of years, they just kind of got stale. And he went out and made changes within the program that have, to me, ignited them a little bit. They went 4-2 last year. Their two losses, I believe, were both by 3 points. I know they lost to Ball State by 3, and Ball State won the MAC last year.
Yes.
But I believe their other loss was only by 3 points last year. I'm looking it up now. Yes, it was to at Western Michigan by 3. And so, and despite struggling at times against Central Michigan, was able to hang on and win that game. I think he's done a really nice job.
Right.
Reinventing his program a little bit, bringing in some fresh blood, and he brought in teachers. And at the MAC level, that's what you need. You bring in teachers. Guys are going to recruit and teach. So I just think it's going to be you're going to see two really well-coached football teams on the field on Saturday. When we're talking about this defense, Notre Dame defense against the Toledo offense.
Yeah.
I expect Notre Dame to dominate because honestly they should, because they have way better players.
They're a top 10 team.
Yes, exactly. And right. But it's just going to be enjoyable to watch because even if Notre Dame does dominate, you're going to see Toledo's like, boy, that Notre Dame whooped them pretty good, but that team's going to be hard to beat in the MAC. I think we're all going to see that, even if Notre Dame dominates the way that I think they should. Sure. And that's what me, Vince. I get all nerdy when it's like you start watching these really well-coached teams. It's like, oh my goodness, so you got to watch this, and just little things like the quarterback footwork on the RPOs, and just the ability to come out of the ride and just have your feet set to throw, just like little things like
carrying out fakes. I think is huge.
Yeah, all that stuff. I mean, that's something that Jack Cohn I thought did a great job. People are like, why is he handing the ball off so close to the line? I'm like, because he's fake, or he's not. Sometimes it's not even fake. It's the read. You got to stick with that read to know if you're going to pull the ball and throw. So I just like well-coached football. And I think this matchup in particular is going to be really well. It's going to be a really well-coached defense. Again, did they make mistakes? Yes. Do I still think Marcus Freeman's a heck of a coach? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I still think Mike Gelson's a heck of a D-line coach? Absolutely. They had a bad game.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. So that's going to be it for this part of the match, of the breakdown of the Notre Dame defense against the Toledo offense. Tomorrow we'll have our predictions about this. But since we have Vince, right, so he doesn't have to go back to class in 5 minutes, we're going to take advantage of Vince and go through some questions. So I know that we probably both got bumped down here quite a bit.
Yeah, where I'm at is where we were talking about Lawrence Keys.
Yes.
843 is my top.
Yep. So I want to get kind of past some of that because I would like to try.
There was a super chat.
Matt D had a question. He says, "Does this have more to do with Styles doing well, or the same old, same old?" It has nothing to do with Styles. They don't play the same position. This is because Styles played one play,
right,
on Sunday. It's not like Styles played more than him. It's the same old stuff. So that's going to be something to say. Oh, and you know what else I forgot? Somebody just texted me about this. Do you remember we talked about this summer? The D-line coach is at Toledo, right? The co-D coordinator is Coach K, the guy that was that D-line coach at like Miami, and then Alabama hired him. He put all those D linemen at Miami in the NFL. He's at Miami for a long time. So again, he made some really good hires this offseason. So, but yeah, I think this is, you said there was another super chat down there, Vince?
Right here. Yep. I got it. Connor.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Sorry about that, Connor.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And we had already kind of passed this topic, so I knew he would come back to it. He says, so going deep in the rabbit hole here, if BK does pull the trigger on Dell, who do they go after, you think?
I have no idea.
That's a loaded question. Because
and he's not going to do anything right. Even if BK decides tomorrow that this ain't working, which he won't, it's not going to happen
until the end of the season.
Because to me, Dell hasn't done anything to be fired in the middle of the season, because Dell's a high character guy. I think he's a bad coach, but he's a good man. He doesn't break rules. He doesn't cheat.
Right.
He doesn't act in a way that's degrading to. I just don't think he's. I don't think he's a good coach.
Right.
From a character standpoint, I have no problems with Del Alexander, none at all. If in fact, it's quite the opposite, which is why it's taken me so long to be at the point where like I'm done with it.
Sure.
Because I was hoping he'd turn it around because everything I've ever heard about him is he's a great guy, right? Like I know coaches respect him. I know Chip Long loved him. I mean, they were friends. That's why he brought him here.
Yeah, they came together.
I've heard that Tommy Rees has a ton of respect for Del as a person. I don't know about him as a coach. I'm not saying he doesn't as a coach. I'm just saying like I'm focusing on the person right now. So I was hoping it would work out, but it's just, I mean, at this point in time, it's just like,
right.
I mean, come on, man. It's just, but who would they go after? I don't really know. I don't, I think I've said this before. I would throw everything I have at Curtis Johnson, who's coaching receivers for the Saints right now. He used to be the receivers coach at Miami back when they had Reggie Wayne and Santana Moss, but that's my bias, if I'm being honest, because that's who I studied coming up as a coach. When I was transitioning from, playing quarterback, I played receiver as a freshman. I started as a freshman receiver in college, but I grew up playing quarterback, moved back to quarterback after my freshman year. Quarterback was my position. I knew receiver from a scheme standpoint as a quarterback.
Yeah, right.
But as far as, teaching it was a different story. And so the two coaches that I actually studied was Urban Meyer from, at that time, and then who was at Bowling Green, and that staff, Billy Gonzalez was his receivers coach. Because with them, I could see it firsthand because they were at BG and I was at Wittenberg. And so I could just drive up to Bowling Green and watch them go through spring practice and be at their summer camps and stuff like that.
Right.
Then, and the other one, it was Curtis Johnson. So I would study his coaching videos. I would watch how his receivers played. I had some practice. I was able to get my hand on some practice, some drill tape that he had. And he was kind of the guy that I patterned myself after from a teaching standpoint. So, and he's, the Saints usually have pretty good receivers, but there's like Tyron Carrier, who's the receivers coach at Houston's a guy that I like as a young coach. I don't know about him as a recruiter and all that, but there's a lot of good receivers coaches out there. You need to hire somebody that can earn the players' trust, that can teach them how to play the game, and someone that can recruit. Those are the three keys. And if I could give you three names, that's fine, but I don't love doing that when there's not an opening. I feel that's disrespectful to Coach Alexander.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to do that. And the other part of it too is if I were to give names and then we'd spend the next several months talking about those names, and sometimes I'll do that. Like I talked about Marcus Freeman before he was hired.
Oh yeah, we both did.
But it would then kind of turn into, if they don't hire one of those three guys, it almost turns into like, well, who's this guy? Well, why didn't you hire these guys that we've kind of been talking about for 8 months?
Right.
Because there's probably a dozen or so at least coaches that could probably come to Notre Dame and coach these receivers up real well
and be real successful.
If not more.
Yeah, right.
If not more.
Yeah.
It's about finding a guy that can coach, that can motivate, that can teach, and can recruit. And I don't care if he's a 1AA coach. I don't care if he's a Power 5 coach. I don't care if he's an NFL coach. Find someone that can do that at a high level and give him that opportunity. And somebody that will obviously work with Tommy Rees. Well,
sure.
I think that's obviously a key as well. Is find somebody that can fit well with what Tommy wants to do system wise and schematically. Like I wouldn't want to bring in necessarily like an air raid guy, right? Unless you really interviewed him and realize, hey, I can teach the air raid because I know how to teach receiver, but I've coached in this offense too. Because air raid guys it's way different. You play one side of the field, you have like 6 routes. Everything is right-footed or left-footed because you don't switch sides. That's not unless that guy can say, hey, look, that's. I taught that because that's what our offense was, but I can do more, but that would always be a little bit of a red flag for me from a position coach standpoint, because Notre Dame doesn't run an air raid. That's the reason why. Notre Dame has a more advanced route package that needs to be taught. And that's one mistake that I think Notre Dame has made is they don't teach how to play receiver as well enough. They teach the scheme, but they don't teach how to play well enough, in my opinion. You got some more, Vince?
Yes, let me see here. I don't know if you want to. I want you to read it first. 904. Give me a yay or a nay on that one.
Okay, I'll look at it here real quick. $904. Oh, that's way down. All righty.
Sorry.
I know what it's not.
The first 904.
No.
Okay. All right. I didn't think so, but I wanted to
No.
get your opinion on that one real quick. All right. I'm going to scroll away.
There was none of the other ones up there.
It was all.
I see. I'm looking through it now.
Yeah, right. We do have another super chat though. If you want to grab that while I'm still
let me do this. Appreciate. Is that another from Kevin Dillon? I think that. Yes, sir.
My gosh,
All
Kevin
right.
Dillon.
There we go. Kevin with another super chat. Appreciate you very much, Kevin.
Man,
so are the receiver rotation decisions made by just one person? Like, is that just a chronic Dell problem?
No question.
No, I think the whole offensive, the coordinator is going to be involved in those things with the whole offense, right? Tommy Reese is going to say, hey, look, here's what we want. Here's the guys we want in. Make sure that we get guys in. But once you get into the game, it's up to the position coach to then carry that out. So, no, this isn't just a Dell problem. But part of the reason that I don't think they're always having the faith to go to a deeper bench is because he's not doing a good enough job getting more guys prepared to play. That's an issue, in my opinion.
And they ask him who's ready. I mean, that's a conversation that takes place. And if you have faith in your coaches, you're going to listen to them. I mean,
because Tommy can't be in the receiver meetings as well.
Right.
He can't be working with the receivers.
He's got his own position.
He's the quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to trust your staff. And if your receivers coach says this, this, and this, then you're going to trust them. But
right.
But at the end of the day, it's a top down thing, right? So Brian Kelly has to be more involved in this. And then there's a great comment from David Trudeau, Vince, that's down here as you look through for more. He makes this comment I thought was a great point. Hearing this news and reminds me of what Chase Claypool said about not learning a lot before he got to the NFL. So we take a long time to develop, and we aren't giving talented players any chances. So he didn't quite say it that way, although that's kind of what he meant.
That's what he was inferring.
After 4 years at Notre Dame, he came back working with the players. It was before last year, right?
It was during like mini camp. It was after
because it was before all the COVID stuff started, and it was because it was like they had only had a mini camp, right, or a rookie camp. I mean, they weren't even like into his mid of a season. He had barely been with the Steelers, and he made a comment. They did some like hype video. It was for Chase Claypool. It wasn't for Notre Dame, but a comment he made to one of his teammates during this workout was, "Man, if I knew how to run routes like this, we'd have been nasty." And I'm like, well, why the heck didn't you know how to run routes like that after 4 freaking years? The Steelers guy could teach him that in a week.
In a week.
And so that was like Chase didn't mean it, because I don't think Chase was
he wasn't attempting to throw anybody under the bus.
No, he was not. He was. It was him just with his boys and playing ball and working out, and just like it was like him and Ian, like man, if I know this, we dominated. It's like, I moved away from Bath Middle School when I was going to go to high school, and my senior year they went to the playoffs and they got beat like kind of early, and the quarterback situation wasn't great. And I've had friends still to this day. I saw a buddy of mine a couple years ago. He came up to me and saw me when I was visiting a line. He said, "Man, if you wouldn't have left, I'm like, God, I'm 40 something, right? Like, let it go. Okay. It wasn't my choice. I didn't have a say in where we moved. But it was kind of like that. Like, it was like, just reminiscing with, man, if I did this, if I knew this, we would have done this, that, and the other. And, but it was an indictment of Notre Dame. And for him to say that, because again, he didn't intend to, but it was.
I got a good one here. Oh, you got one. Whenever you laugh like that, I know you got a good one.
Brian, when BK calls to offer you the receivers coaching position, will you still run IB on the side?
You get your real inside info then.
Yes. I'm pretty sure. So you really think that guy's going to play at receiver? Pretty darn.
Yeah.
Number one.
What I want to see is after you get hired, I want you to sit in the media and ask Brian Kelly questions. Coach,
I'm running IB here. I'm going to go to my player position meeting, but why don't you give the receivers coach a raise?
Yeah,
I think that's important. Listen, I'm never going to get offered a job by Brian Kelly. I'm never going to apply for a job by Brian Kelly. He has no interest in hiring me. I have no interest in coaching at Notre Dame. I love what I do. I love the fact that I can work in the same house as my wife. I don't have the coaching bug, and I don't think about it because it's not going to happen. Right. So it's just not something to think about. And I would never apply for a job because that would be incredibly unprofessional if I were to apply for a job while covering Notre Dame. And then if I don't get the job, which I wouldn't, why would you hire a guy that was covering a website, right? Who's coached football for 2 years in the last decade. Right. you're not going to hire that guy. But then if I'm critical, you're critical because
you didn't get the job.
They didn't hire you. Well, that would be a conflict of interest in my opinion. So he has no interest in hiring me. I have no interest in applying for jobs, but I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, right.
Very, very much. Yes, I do. But yes, that would be running IB on the side. I'd be kind of busy. So no wonder Driscoll doesn't get any recruits. When he's not busy, or when he's not coaching, he's freaking running that Irish breakdown stuff.
He's doing live pods on the plane to go visit a recruit.
If I got hired to coach at Notre Dame in this fun, never going to happen fun scenario, Vince would be retiring as a teacher and he'd be running Irish breakdown.
Yeah.
So and I guarantee you get all the scoop. You get all the scoop.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, man, Vince's articles sound a lot like Driscoll's. That's weird. That's really weird. So crazy.
Learn from the best.
Not going to happen, but that's a fun, nice little lighthearted thing to do there, Anthony. I needed that. I needed that comedy relief, so I appreciate that.
Here we got a good one from John. He says, "Who's the leader when it comes to intensity on defense? I think Kyron is the leader on offense. Hopefully Josh Lugg fires the offensive lineup. He's been vocal this offseason when talking standard. Oh, there might be more to this. When talking standard, I'm not sure. But anyway, I think that the leader on defense. I
think there's a few.
You think there's a few?
I think there's a few emotional leaders, and I think they're at each position.
Okay.
I think the first one's Kurt Hinish, even though he's a little nuts. I mean that in a good way.
Well,
I think he's a guy that you kind of have to, I think that's partly why they recruited Donovan. Right, is you need that kind of crazy, intense guy that, hey, if you don't bring it that day, you're going to bring it. I think Jason Adamiola is not so much a vocal leader in practice, but he's got that swagger. Mm-hmm. Right? I think that kind of combination inside of the not as talented, emotional, fiery guy that puts like the Latimer face paint on his field or on his face, and he plays beyond his talent level, and then you've got that high confidence, swaggery type of three technique in Jason Adamiola. I think that combination is what sparks a lot of that defensive line intensity. But there's a lot of focused dudes on that group. I think at the linebacker level, I think it's Drew White.
Absolutely.
And then on the secondary level, I think Kyle Hamilton's becoming that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyle Hamilton is assuming more of an emotional leadership kind of role. I'll tell you one thing I was impressed by in the game on Saturday, and we didn't talk enough about this. I was super impressed by the communication on the safety level, especially when it was Houston and Kyle. There was one particular snap where Flores 8 motions across, and you can see Houston turning around to Kyle and just yelling and being very pointy with him. And he rolls back, Kyle rolls down, Kyle makes a call, and you're like, oh, game one, you guys are already doing that. Like,
yeah. So I told you.
You go. Yeah, we saw that a lot. I liked that communication between those two. So,
yeah, that's like I said, and I reported this after one of the practices. The communication part from Houston Griffith is one of the major things that I noticed different in a good way from him during the practices that we saw. And it showed in game one right off the bat. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I agree. Good stuff. Here we go. David Knight. He's got one right up your alley. Brian, towards the end of the show, can you talk just a little bit about the Built Bars? Are they supplemental, meal replacements, or just enjoyable along the way?
They are, I believe they're supplemental, right? They're protein bars. So they are, goodness gracious, we've got these bots coming in crazy tonight. So get another one out of here. Jeez Louise. They are, you know what, Vince, can you find another question and talk for a second? I'm going to go grab one.
I'll go get one. Okay. Yeah.
Go grab one.
Yeah, let me see if I can't find something else here. I'm laughing at Brett's here. Mowing the lawn at night. Your neighbors must love you. That's fantastic. Because yes, we all know who that neighbor is, and we all hate that neighbor. That's a fact. And I will remind everybody that Brian and I are neighbors for the most part. We live in the same neighborhood, but like kind of on the other side of each other. So I think that's actually pretty funny. Anthony says, bad coach and poor developer of talent would not fly at Ohio State or Alabama. You're right. It wouldn't. And that, if Brian Kelly has a flaw, I think we can all agree that's one of the flaws, right? I think we can all agree on that he holds on to coaches who aren't living kind of up to par a little longer than he should. And I think we can all agree with that. And hopefully, eventually he seems to get it and he ends up making changes. It just takes too long. That's my big issue. It takes him too long to get there, right? It's not like math class where I need to see all your work, man. I just need the answer, and I need you to get to that answer a little bit faster. That's kind of how I feel about that. Chad William, there's a special place in hell for people who mow at dusk and before 9 a.m. on a weekend.
Yes, Chad, agree. It was totally me setting Vince's kid up to get hammered by my neighbors.
Oh, it's great. That is fantastic. Yeah. That is good stuff, Chad.
There really is.
Right.
And second of all, I mean, can you even do a great mow job at that early when there's still dew on the ground and all that?
Then that's exactly right. The grass is too wet. It's too wet. It's not going to work, man. I've tried to beat the heat.
I got a neighbor who I think mows his lawn just to kind of get out of the house. So he'll just do it at the most random times.
I know that.
And it's like, dude, it's 9 o'clock. Like, give me a break. Give me a break. So to answer David's question here real quick, Vince, if
throw it back up.
So I'm gonna pull this up here real quick, and just kind of this is a little example that they have on their website that kind of talks about some of the nutrition facts about it compared to like other protein bars. So you can kind of see some of the nutrition levels there. That's comparing it to candy bars, right? So you see the difference there, a lot less fat, way less sugar, things along those lines. Then you go up here to some of these other protein bars. So, to me, it's meant to be, I don't know if I'd call it a supplement, because I don't think it's meant to like replace meals. For us, it's kind of like a snack, like, hey, instead of having an extra meal, I'll just kind of have this and make sure that I'm getting enough protein. If I don't, like, we're starting to kind of work on our diets. My wife and I are trying to starting eating a little healthier, a little better. Trying to eat smaller meals and reading that they're kind of do more and do more, eat more but eat less, kind of eat less amounts and all those kind of things. So this is kind of like one of those snacks during the day kind of thing. So I enjoy it, and the taste is really good. I mean, we got one that I bought. It's called cookie dough. It was like, oh my gosh. Just got that last week. It's cookie. It's literally chunks of cookie dough in there.
That is cheating.
With dark chocolate. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I like it. So, David, I hope that answers your question about the Built bars. But yeah, I mean, if you go to their website, I think it's like built.com. If you go to their website, it has all that stuff on there. But it's again, it's a low calories, really tasty, and high in protein because it's a protein bar. Yeah, and that, like, my sister's like, yeah, I'd love to buy them and support your company, your relationship. But she's like, I bought them once. I bought a big box of them because you can get them like 18. She goes, it lasted like 2 days because she's got 4 kids.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh dang, your kids ate them. She goes, no, my kids had like 1 each. She just kept eating them because they're so tasty. And my 2 favorite, I have Cherry Barcia is what I have here, and then coconut almond, which tastes like an almond joy, but I don't like almond joys, so I like that. And the thing I like too is they say on there if it has nuts or no nuts, and they'll even say like it's made on equipment that has nuts or not made on. I mean, so it really protects you if you have nut allergies. You can look at those kind of things and find out if that's what you're gonna do. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Now back to some Notre Dame football.
Wow, Tommy Guns says, Vinny D, do you participate in shooting sports?
Because he had asked earlier about going to the range on Sunday again after the Purdue game. He's going to be in town and he wants to go to the range. And
look at you guys are going to hang out. Yeah. I will say no, but not because I'm against it or any of that. It's just I only have so many hours in the day that I can do things. And
you went with me once.
I did go with you once, and it was enjoyable. I did enjoy it.
You haven't been with me to the outdoor range yet. If you did that, you would want to go more.
Yeah, it's just I just don't have time. I was an Eagle Scout way back in the day, so we did some shooting sports obviously then, but not since then.
Yeah,
not since then.
Did we have Larry Friedell's comment at the beginning? I wish that we still had that. He's someone, but he had a comment at the beginning how he got his Irish Breakdown merch, he got his Built bars ordered, and he cashed his Social Security checks. and he's getting ready to listen to IB show. I don't know if he pulled that up at the beginning or not, but
I love that.
That was great. Yeah. And honestly, here's the other thing about the Built Bar thing. I'll be honest with you. You may or may not like them, but here's my promise to you. I will only ever do any kind of partnership like that with something that I like.
Right.
If I don't think something's a good product. Now, on our podcast, I don't control what commercials are on our podcast. I don't have control over what YouTube plays. Right. I'm talking about products that we push. Like if I'm up here like, hey, Built Bars, it's because I got them and I like them.
Right.
Right. Not because they're paying me to do it. It's because I like it. I reached out to them. I pursued them so that I could get discounts for you all, because if you like them too, then go for it. And my mom likes them, and that's who actually had me. She's like, you got to try one of these. I was like, pass. I don't do protein bars. They're nasty. And she's like, no, I promise you like this. I'm like, okay, Mom. You also said that I would like kale. You've also said that I like, cooked carrot. And you've been lying to me about things I'd like my whole life. She was right about this one. So I like it a lot. So,
oh my gosh, that's great.
But no, so I just again, that doesn't mean everybody's going to like them, but that's my promise to you. If we are directly pushing a product, it's because it's something that I like. And somebody asked if they sell them in the store. I don't know. I know you can get them online, and that's where. So basically, there's a link down in the description bar below where if you use the Irish Breakdown promo code, you get 10% off. Mm-hmm. And so that's and he said he also has his Cheez-It Toasties in the cupboard. So Larry is ready to go.
Yeah, and
I had somebody cancel their monthly membership recently because they said money's getting a little tight. He goes, I had to make sure I had my Cheez-It bought. I lost it. It's
fair.
I was like, you know what?
It's all good, man.
I get it.
And we are in talks with another company that we're hoping to get on board with us. And again, it's a company that not only we like their product, but we love what they stand for. And so that, again, we're not going to push anybody that we don't appreciate and agree with their product and generally their stance as well.
It's not something we're going to do often.
Say that. Yeah, exactly.
We're not going to be like also an hour show and like 25 minutes of it is us pushing products.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't mean I may not pimp out the back of my wall like a race car driver.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying, I'm not gonna
get some patches on the shirt, There's nothing wrong with that. I just think the Built Bar Irish podcast really went well today. Sorry, anyway. Anthony Solomon says Vince works 2 jobs. Actually, I got like 4. But to be honest with you, but
do you count coaching as one of them?
If I counted coaching, it would be 5. Because I work at Notre Dame in the summer.
Okay.
And then WSBT here.
Oh, okay. That's
right. I mean,
I was forgetting about Gatorade and WSBT.
Yeah, so lots of jobs, but lots of kids. I mean, it just it happens. We got a Toledo fan in the house.
There you go.
So be Haas, go Rockets.
There you go.
Welcome, man. I am assuming I should not do that. Welcome, be Haas. We love.
Yeah, Vince has gotten in trouble before.
I have, and I don't want to go down that road again.
Vince, that ain't a dude.
I don't want to go down that road. I apologize.
Anthony said, sorry to shortcut you on the job.
Yeah, it's okay, man. Don't worry about it.
Sparkling Swan said, I've tried all different protein bars from top to bottom. Might have to try those since all others taste like garbage. I swear to you, I was exactly the same way before I tried these. I mean, I hate protein bars. My wife's tried to make me have some early in our marriage. She has since given up on trying to get me to try stuff she knows I won't like.
Right.
So yes, that one. And then here we go, Vince.
Yeah. Boom.
He ain't right. Yeah, he ain't wrong. He ain't wrong.
He ain't wrong at all.
He ain't wrong. So
he ain't wrong at all.
Yeah,
let's see here. Sparkling Swan says, is it confirmed that Keys is leaving? Yes.
Yes.
Just yes. It's the short answer.
I hope that they're able to change his mind. I really do. I hope they can change his mind. I don't think it's going to happen, but I hope they can change his mind. But as of right now, I can say with certainty that's and I don't just hear something and run with it. This is something I've known for days. I've tried to make sure that there was time to process, that there was time to have conversations, that I asked parties involved in all types of different directions. Okay, I'm going to run with this. Are you good with that? And I was given the okay. So I still hope that they try to convince him to come back. I do. I don't know if it would work, but I hope that they try to convince him to come back. We have a super chat here, Vince.
Oh, hit
from
it.
S. Grove. Hey, Vince, I'm a Riley alumni and now have 2 nephews there. Any chance I can get you to mess with them for me? Same last name, hockey players.
That's fantastic. One of the things I do best is mess with children. Wow, that did not sound good in any way. I
likes
love
playing practical jokes.
Yes, I love to give kids a hard
students
time.
at his high school.
Right.
You're 0 for 2, Vince.
Dude,
0 for 2. Vince likes to play practical jokes on students at his high school.
Yes.
So he'd be more willing to play a practical joke or have some lighthearted fun of the comical nature with your nephews. So that way, yes, just want to make sure that.
Yes, thank you for helping me clarify what I wanted to say there. I appreciate that.
Yes, and then we did get this question here, Luke Kirkwood. What do y'all think about Keys if you didn't already talk about it? Well, we definitely talked about it because we broke the story.
Right.
So I would encourage you, Luke, to go back and listen to our comments on it. We went on for a while. I don't necessarily want to rehash that again now. The show's going to be wrapping up here soon, so you'll be able to go back and listen to it. But it's obviously it's a blow for Notre Dame. It hurts their depth. You've got I was doing my best. He's going
to do something to keep me out of trouble, man. It wouldn't be the first or the last time my mouth has gotten me in trouble. Yeah. That's for sure.
0 for 3. 0 for 3. Hey, Vince, why don't you just I'll finish up here, man. I'll clean up this mess.
Gosh, man, I just get the shovel out.
I'm going to cut this part out of when I put it on the podcast. I'm going to go
probably fair. That's probably fair. I will. Oh, God. Yeah. Well, and IB may not be an option anymore either. I mean, I'm just dropping jobs like flies, man. Jeez.
Oh, goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. S. Grove, you started it. Okay, I'm just saying. You started it.
Hey, go Cats,
can
man.
we try to get – you had another super chat you wanted to go.
I got a chat. I got a comment anyway from OpDragon19. He goes, have either one of you had a chance to watch Inside the Garage podcast? Great to see a different side of the player personalities. I haven't watched it, but I have listened to it. I listened to 2 episodes while I was cutting the grass.
How was it?
It was actually pretty good.
I've heard a lot of good things. Like I've heard it's like they do a good job presentation and the good flow is good. I've heard
Kyle Hamilton kind of leads it, and the other guys kind of go along with it, right? And they've got different topics that they hit, different segments, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it's just I can see it in my eyes, right? And we actually talked to Connor Radigan's dad, because Dr. Radigan is the orthopedic surgeon
at WSBT.
On WSBT on our pregame show, which is on 5 hours before kickoff locally. You can check that out if you want. We interview former players and people of the like, and we had a great show this past Saturday. Highly recommend checking that out. Bryant Young and all kinds of guys. But anyway,
we talked to the legend. Sorry, awesome. You just said Bryant Young. I got fired up. Sorry about that.
We talked to so many cool dudes on this show. It was like mind blowing. But anyway, we talked to Dr. Radigan, and he was saying that they kind of had this planned for a couple of years and just never really had a chance to do it. And then when the NIL stuff hit, they're also going to make a few bucks, which is great.
No brainer.
He says they basically have a studio set up on their beer pong table in the garage, and it's looks like a professional studio, and
it's literally inside the garage.
Yes,
really?
It's literally in their garage. And it just sounds like a bunch of college guys having fun. That's what it sounds like to me, and it's enjoyable. Like I can't remember what it was, but I laughed out loud a few different times because it just you can tell that they all get along. You know what I mean? And so it was good. I enjoyed it. It's. Look, you're not going to get any hard hitting or anything like that, but you're going to get some inside info.
But I mean, that's what we're here for, right?
Exactly.
Like we're going to provide analysis and objectivity that I don't think players or coaches can provide of themselves.
Absolutely.
Getting a chance to watch a pod, like I haven't watched it yet. I don't have any desire to watch it just because I don't have the time. If I have that extra time, then I'm just going to go spend it with my wife or read a book or do something, watch some film. I don't have anything against it. But I think things like that can be good because number one, it's a great lesson for them. It's about, producing a show and coming up with a game plan, so to speak, and then learning about presentation and interacting with each other and then interacting with their audience. And I think it's great for fans because it gives you some insights. It's like Kyle Hamilton's not just this, future top 5 NFL draft pick. Cam Hart's not just a cornerback for Notre Dame. These are young men that have, personalities and interests and all these kind of things. And that's one of the good things that I think I come from NIL. Like, who'd have known that Dylan Gibbons had the heart for service that he does without NIL?
Exactly.
Right. Yes, and I've read so many stories about these players that are like starting these charities that they couldn't do before. And they're using their NIL to raise money for less advantaged people. Like, there's so many great, we talk all the time about, this kid got busted for weed and this guy got in trouble for doing this to a girl. And this guy, is a selfish guy and all this. And we don't ever hear about those stories. I had a friend of mine that played for the Chargers a while back. And he said, the media would just focus on, this Ryan Leaf and this guy got in trouble. And it's like 5 or 6 troublemakers. It's like, man, most of us just went home to our families. Most of us were in the community every day, meeting with kids and trying to help, but the media doesn't want to cover that. And so I think this is kind of cool because these kids can kind of just go directly to the fans in certain ways. And I think that's great as long as they're, again, they're student athletes. I want to make sure that they're still able to do the things they need to do as student athletes. But I think it's, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine could you imagine if Chris Zorich had a podcast back in the 88 and 89?
Oh,
it'd been awesome.
That'd be friggin' fantastic. Yeah. I would have loved to listen to that.
Yeah.
Anthony Solomon, he says, Brian, I want to thank you for answering my DM on IB last night. Most sites get back to you at a later date. Another reason I'm at IB and not at other sites.
Well, I don't know about other sites, but I just feel like, and I don't always do it. I don't always succeed at it. But if you're willing to pay your hard-earned money to support our site and to be a part of our community, then the least you can do is, feel like you're valued. You know, like when somebody signs up, I personally send a letter to them. Now it's a letter that I copy, but it's from me. If you replied, it's coming to me, So yeah, and then we have a question down here, Vince.
There's a really good one about Foskey. Okay.
Yeah. Great to catch another after-hour show. How do I get an IB flag? So in the description bar below, Nate, is a link to our Irish Breakdown merch store.
Did you put it up there?
I did. It is now up there. Yeah.
Nice.
So you can get that from the merch store.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Sparkling Span, news of Keys just starting breaking, blowing up on social. Spot on, Brian. Yes, that's because we broke the story.
And I hope they give you the credit. That
I doubt that they will. They never do.
I know they don't. They always find somebody else to give credit to, which really annoys me.
I don't care. I don't do it for that.
It just annoys me.
I'm sorry that it annoys you, Vince.
It does. It annoys me. I want you to get the respect you deserve.
Yeah, I don't care.
Joseph has a really good question. Yeah, he says,
I want to get to Chad's about the starting 5 too after this one.
Okay, yeah. He says, can you explain why Foskey would be at middle linebacker position? How does that give a wrinkle or utilize his talents? Personally, it makes 0 sense to me.
So I like it as a mix-up, Joseph, and I did not like it how they used it after they called off the dogs, because what they were doing at times, they were asking him to sit back and read and step to a run play. That's not Isaiah Foskey's role. What I like of it as a change-up in the 3-3-5 is what it allows you to do. It allows you to move Isaiah Foskey around. So you put him at linebacker, and all of a sudden he's crashing in the strong side A gap, whereas normally he'd be in the weak C or the weak B. You bring him off, and he can kind of walk all over, and he can come from him. I mean, you could line him up right next to Myron Tagovailoa and just bring him off the edge if you wanted to, right? There, bring a safety down or replace him there, move him. I mean, you could real creative with that at times. I think also it allows him to play in coverage, which, he's a pretty long and athletic kid. He's had some good moments in coverage. So it allows him to kind of be off and not have to run with a tight end from lined up, jam and then open up and run. I think it also messes with the front a little bit. You get more of an odd front, and then he can insert, basically on a stunt. What I don't want them doing is what they did after they got the 38-20 lead, which was basically acting him like a middle linebacker. And that part, Joseph, I didn't like. Now, occasionally you may do it, but when you're going to do it consistently on snap after snap, that to me is you're not utilizing him correctly. That's why I said I would have gone to a 4-2-5. I would have put him at the Viper and said, hey, you guys need to blow up the edge. And that's something that we're going to have to see here this week is I want to see that they've done a better job. The one area where the D-line struggled on Sunday night, they did not do a good job of setting the edge, in my opinion. Now, part of that may have been that's what they were supposed to do. But I don't think they were meant to get sucked in that way with only one linebacker coming across. I just don't think that was it. I want to answer this question too here, Vince. Troy McIntosh said, "Are guys like Keys and Watts being actively but indirectly recruited to transfer?" No. This isn't anything nefarious. This isn't anything someone saying, "Oh, he was happy, but then this other." No, this is about the relationship with the people. And I haven't said anything about Xavier Watts. So I know other people in this channel have. I have not. I mean, it's been in the chat tonight, but I have not. I have not made a comment about Xavier Watts. I want to make sure that that's clear to the people in the chat. We've only said anything about Xavier Watts. We've said that other people aren't happy, and I haven't alluded to who. And I actually wasn't necessarily referring to him in these instances. But yes, this isn't just a Xavier Watts. This isn't just a Lawrence Keys issue, in my opinion. He's just the one that's acting on it now because he has less time. I mean,
well,
he's a senior. He's got 2 years left. Right.
He's older. I know you wanted to hit this one, right, Chad Williams?
Yes.
By the USC game, what's the starting offensive line if Fisher's healthy?
I'm hoping it's exactly the one that we saw on Saturday night, but just playing better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing I'm hoping for. I still like Zeke Correll as an option there, but if he doesn't play well, then you've got to consider going to Dirksen or Kristofic or Rocco Spindler. I mean, you have to consider giving one of those guys a chance. If he doesn't step up and start playing pretty well soon. I mean, that's the thing about that position is you should be recruiting that position well enough to where the leash is going to be a little bit short. If you go out and get your butt kicked 3 games in a row, I'm about to find somebody else that's not going to get their butt kicked anymore, Right. But I'm not waving that flag after one game, right? Because if you're going to do that, then you need to bench everybody because nobody played well really on Sunday night. So I would give some time, but yeah, I think to your point, Chad, I would have it, and I think Anthony Solomon said this.
Yeah,
Fisher, Carmody, Patterson at center, Madden at right guard. So basically moving Carmody inside and then moving Zeke Correll back to center. I don't think Zeke Correll's issues will be any better at center because it's about stepping and playing with power.
Yeah. And
we talked about the concern of why we saw that. I mean, look, interior players working with a GA who was heavily involved in film study and in practice session, and then a GA who was a NFL interior player on one of Notre Dame's best lines, an interior player on a 12-0 Notre Dame team who was coached by Harry Heastan. And guess what? It looked a lot like a Harry Heastan coach line. Well, he's not here anymore. The players that were Harry Heastan guys aren't here anymore, right? So it's imperative that Jeff Quinn get back to being able to get that out of his players without a Chris Watt or Harry Heastan influence. I'm hoping he can. I don't want to act like it's all terrible now because we saw them start off poorly in 2018, and by game 5 before Alex Bars got hurt, as we talked about, they were playing pretty good.
Yeah.
So we need to let this develop before. Here's the thing that I always try to avoid, and I would hope that as a community we can do that. We all have preconceived notions or preconceived ideas or biases. I don't think Jeff Quinn's a Notre Dame caliber offensive line coach. What would be unprofessional of me and would be disservice to you all is if every time something bad happened, I use that as a opportunity to bash a guy that I don't think should have been here in the first place.
Right.
I don't think that's fair. I would not do that if Harry Heastan was a coach and had a bad game. I would not be like, oh, see, so it would be incredibly unfair to me. So that's why I keep talking about 2018. Hey, they looked worse against Ball State in 2018 than they did against Florida State. Right, because let's be honest, there was no Jermaine Johnson, Kyrie Thomas, Fabian Lovett, Robert Cooper on Ball State's team, right? None of those guys are playing professionally now. But by game 5, before Alex Bars went down, that line had gone from the garbage we saw against Ball State to against Wake Forest and Stanford. They looked pretty freaking good. So let's give Jeff Quinn an opportunity to do that again. If that doesn't happen within 4 or 5 games, then we can say, hey, okay, you know what, this is going to be a problem. But I don't want to use things that happen that are like, yeah, okay, it confirms what I said as chances to bang on a guy. if I'm going to say be patient with Marcus Freeman after one game,
right,
then we need to say the same thing about Jeff Quinn, whether we like one guy or don't like the other guy as a coach.
And look, nobody wants the offensive line to succeed more than I do. I absolutely do. And I've said this before on our podcast. I like Jeff Quinn as a person. I've had conversations with him a few different times because, like I said, my summer job is I work with the summer camp programs and I work with all the different camps. And I've had conversations when Jeff Quinn was one of the analysts. He was just kind of on the side, at camp and things like that. He and I had like an hour-long conversation. Right. He didn't know me from Adam. It's not because I was a member of the media or whatever. We just
There's no sucking up. There's no like, hey, if I'm nice to this guy, he'll say things about me. It's just kind of
he was just a great guy. So I want him to be successful. I do. It's just we haven't seen it yet. But I'm going to give him time. I'm going to give him some opportunities. And I think there's a great opportunity with this game and the game coming up and et cetera to get this offensive line right because there's talent. There's talent here. And we just need to see it working together and properly. So, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, agree. Vince, are there any other questions? I know you've got to your kids are getting ready to go to bed and stuff. So are there any other questions that you see that we can get to here tonight before we roll up out of here?
David got us shouted out here. He says, I have to wear my IB merch when I go to the Cincy game, and I'm getting that flag. I love that. Fly it with faith and honor. All right. I love that.
I don't know about all that, right?
I mean, I do.
But
can you tell I'm watching that. Like a serial that takes place in like the 1600s?
Yeah. Anthony Psalm says, okay, Brian, I want to replace Carmody with Spindler. Are you referring to at left tackle, or are you referring to in his scenario where he had him at left guard and he wants to put Spindler? I think, that's what he's referring to. Yeah. As you're looking for more, Jeff Nankin says, just tuned in. I will go back and listen from the start, but is there an issue with receivers being unhappy? I think it's a lack of trust thing is what it boils down to. Yes, playing time is part of that trust, right? But it's a deeper issue than just playing time. It's about, do you believe that your coach is going to be honest with you and develop you and help, does he have your back?
Right.
And if you've given yourself to a program for 4 years and if you don't think that's happening, and I don't love it when kids quit in the middle of the season, but with what I know of this situation, I'm not going to be as critical of it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. We got somebody wants to call CPS on me, so that's awesome.
Are they being serious?
No.
Okay.
No, it's Chad. He goes, I used to be a mandatory reporter, Vince. I think it's CPS. And as a teacher, I'm a mandatory reporter as well. So I guess I got to call on myself. So
I said something really stupid in a podcast line, but I swear I didn't mean it. I misspoke.
Would it be wrong if I said it's not the first time? But, whatever.
Yeah, 0 for 4.
I think that's about it. I think we're good here. But thanks everybody for joining us on our IB After Dark. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. That's awesome, especially everybody that threw a super chat. Very appreciated, guys. OC Irish fan Vince. I've always held Eagle Scouts in the highest of regard. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome. I got it when I was 15. So it's been a couple days since I got it, but it was a real honor. I worked real hard to get it at 15. So I could worry about high school sports after that, but hey, I got it. It's an accomplishment that I'm really proud of, actually. So anyway, Brian, hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope everybody out there has
we'll be back tomorrow here in what, Vince, about 14 and a half hours. We're going to be back at it with our prediction show.
Yes, sir.
That'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun. So
we'll be back on our normal schedule now.
Make sure that you stay locked into irishbreakdown.com for what we have written. So it kills me. Like I had a couple buddies of mine text me during the show, like, hey, did you hear Lawrence Keys is leaving Notre Dame? I'm like, yeah. Sure did.
You said, I broke it.
I know. I actually did say that to a couple of them. We did have a super chat before we leave, Vince.
I clicked it.
Dylan Riggins. Hey, Brian, my schedule changed recently. Was working a lot. Haven't been able to be a part of the live shows as much, but believe I don't miss a show. Keep it up, IB Nation. Hit the like on the way out, boys. Dylan, thank you so much for that super chat. I really, really appreciate it.
It's like a buzzer beater with the show, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that. So appreciate you being a part of it. He says hit the like button. I agree with him. D-Rock says hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell, because if you're watching this show later because you didn't know we had it live, it's because you don't have the notification bell hit. So smash that bell, folks.
That's
and
right.
And you'll be able to keep up with us. So for Vince, I'm Brian. You are the IB family. We will be with you again tomorrow. Have a great night. We will talk to you again very, very soon.